What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is our third episode, and we're going to be covering injuries. Now, injuries is something that is very common to everybody. Everybody at some point has dealt with an injury. Now, those injuries sometimes could last 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 years. It can last a severity of time depending on what the injury is. It's important that we know the history of the injury. And this is something I feel like can get overlooked because we don't pay attention to all the other things that happened before that caused the injury in the first place. So before we dive into that, let's just go over some very basic understanding of what our body is made of. Okay, so we have connective tissue. So connective tissue, we have bones, muscles, ligaments, okay, and tendons. All these tissues work cohesively. I want to make a reference. I want to make a comparison to make you understand this better. When you're thinking about muscles, a lot of people think muscles and they think, this tissue that makes us feel strong, that makes us move weights, that make us move throughout the day. But not only is it that, but our tissue is also, you know, very resilient, and it changes and adapts to depending on what kind of motion and movements you treat it with. So when I'm working with a patient, when I'm working with a client, it depends on the severity of the injury that they're dealing with. But I always like to explain to them, your tendons is one of the things that you sometimes don't take the time to train. And the reason why I say that is because things that you do with dumbbells, if you're doing dumbbell training, weight training, you're training the joint and the muscle as well. But sometimes in the movement speed that you're training it at, you can overlook the tension relationship with the tendon. The tendon needs to be trained a lot slower, and it has to be trained in a sense of, uh, you know, being able to understand resistance with a different kind of stimulation. I would say that, not to confuse you guys, but what I would say is when you're doing weight training and you're doing band training, there's different effects that go into training the tissue. I like to combine both, but when you train with dumbbells, you train with weights, you get really good at moving weight from one end to another end. The muscle really understands the range of motion that you're putting it in, but tendons have to do with range of motion. Now, to make this simpler, I would say the muscle is, like the anatomy of it, for you to understand it better. The muscle, this tissue, is a certain length. And I would say I'm going to compare it to the palm of my hand, right? So the muscle is this. What connects the muscle to the bone, right? So what connects the muscle, like the bicep muscle, to the bone is a tendon. Now, they work as anchors, okay? And these anchors understand length. So there's a reason why there's times that you pick up heavy dumbbells and you can't hold them for long. Your body just your muscles just want to go down. They just want to give up on the weight, right? Because you have muscle spindles and Golgi tendons. These are basically receptors that you have that allow the body to understand length and tension. These are things that it's spoken about in kinesiology, exercise phys, and trainers have an understanding of this. A lot of strength coaches have an understanding of this, but I like to really tell people that when you're getting back from an injury, you have to start training all the components of that injury. It's not just let me just start picking weight and let me start doing reps. It's a lot of times working smaller ranges of motion. So when you deal with an injury, you might have someone that rolled their ankle, for example. So there's going to be a recovery time in rolling your ankle, whether it's 2 weeks. You're going to go through some bruising. It depends on, did you slightly strain those ligaments. Ligaments, now, don't get confused ligaments with tendons, okay? So we spoke about the muscle being connected to the tendon and it connects to the bone. Now, the bone has joints. Those joints have their own versions of tendons, which would be ligaments. And these ligaments basically work as anchors, as we just said. But the problem with ligaments that a lot of people run into surgery with is because ligaments are primarily more avascular than a tendon would be. Not necessarily meaning that they're completely avascular, but it just means that it doesn't have enough blood supply like a muscle belly has. So I'm gonna break that down for you. What does avascular mean? Avascular meaning not there's not oxygen to give that blood supply to that tissue. But you have muscles that have a lot of vascularity. So that's the reason why you're able to work out, get sore, repair, and go back to the gym and go back into training because you have a mechanism that goes into repairment. In ligaments, you don't really have that because that's the structure of what that is, right? So that's why it doesn't repair. And there's a lot of times that you're going to need surgery for that. So in rolling a situation like an ankle, you go through that bruising. Let's say you had that muscle, the muscle around the foot now a little bit more swollen around the ankle, and you also had a little tendon strain. I mean, sorry, a ligament strain. Now you got to deal with the recovery time frame of that. It might be that you can't even put pressure onto your foot, and that's okay. You might not be able to put pressure in the beginning, but slowly you'll be able to adjust with what things you can and cannot do. That's why it's important you deal with a physical therapist that can allow you to teach you the steps into coming back from an injury. A lot of times, the simplest thing that you can do is just rest and not do anything to it. By stretching that muscle or that joint, you might make things worse. So it's better to just let the healing process happen, let the inflammation go down, and then you're able to move on into the next thing. In inflammation is something I think that sometimes people don't understand it as a mechanism of our body's way of trying to heal itself. If you cut your finger and you start bleeding, you're going to have some inflammation in that area. What's happening in that situation? There's white blood cells attacking that area and causing repairment, right? So you're gonna have some inflammation. Inflammation is good. That means that area is healing. So there's a lot of times that you deal with that injury and you're having healing, but you don't see it like that. You're the way you're seeing it is like I need to get this fixed. I need to take these medications and X, Y, and Z. Sometimes, if you can restrain from doing all of that, you have to do things that allow you to recover. Recovery goes down as rest, as simple as that. Sleeping. That's the best way to rest. Not doing really much and just getting off weight from your foot if that was the injury. There's too many injuries to go into topics of what an injury, what injuries are tailored to you. But I'll say one that's very common. People talk about sciatic pain. What's sciatic? So the sciatic pain comes from the hip, right? So the sciatic nerve runs from your spine all the way to the bottom of your foot. And you see the position that I'm in, right? There's a lot of people that work all day in this seated position. Why is sitting so, in a sense, works against you so many times? Is because what are your glutes doing when you're sitting down? You're stretching your glutes, right? It's in a stretch position, but you're also compressing that nerve that is at the hip, right? So that nerve can get compressed because of muscles around the glute can get tight. Muscles like the glute med, the glute max. It depends on your anatomy. It could be the piriformis pressing down on that nerve and causing you to feel this radiation pain coming down the backside of your leg and giving this nagging effect. So you might be just simply tight with your glutes, and you might just need to do something as simple as foam rolling, stretching, doing active recovery, being able to do small prehab exercises with bands, being able to activate the right muscles. That way, those muscles aren't just in a stretched position all day. You haven't done anything for it, and now you're causing these issues. It's one of the most common things I see in training, and we do a lot to prevent that. We do a lot of things to navigate ourselves out of that, because the last thing you want to do is deal with a nagging injury, because that leads to now you being able to stand uncomfortably. You're putting more weight on one side of the body than the other, and that causes just a downfall of other mechanisms that you're doing that's causing you to have pain. So I want you to put that into perspective. Like, what things are you doing to yourself that's causing you pain? Let's talk about lifestyle. Lifestyle. What things can be causing you pain? Another common thing is how you sleep. Okay, people have different ways of sleeping. There's people that sleep facing up. I personally can't face up and sleep. It's not something I feel comfortable with, but I do feel comfortable facing down. Now, is facing down necessarily bad? No. Are there other better ways of sleeping? Yes. What's a better way of sleeping? Maybe on your side, but if you have shoulder injuries like I've had, sleeping on the side could be a little bit discomforting. So, what is it that you can do to better your overall sleep and your health in that sense? If you're laying on your stomach, you want to have a flat pillow. That might be something you're not thinking about, but having a flat pillow will allow you to actually shorten the size in terms of how you're putting your neck. You don't want to put your neck with a high pillow if you're laying down, because now your neck is being stretched and then you're putting a lot of compression onto the lateral side. So it depends on how you're sleeping too, right? Because that means that you slept all night with this side of your body, of your trap, being a lot more stretched and this one being a lot more tight. No wonder you're dealing with these injuries throughout the day. Those are nagging injuries that can lead to maybe a shoulder injury later on. Shoe wear. Shoe wear is such a big factor when it comes to performance, it comes to lifestyle. There's many different shoes out there. Obviously, me, myself, I'm a sneaker freak. I love to have different kind of shoes. Me personally, I love low top Jordans. I just love low top shoes. I think they're super dope. But I know, as much as I love Jordans, as much as I love wearing certain kind of shoes, sometimes there's certain shoes that are uncomfortable, and you got to know that. Ladies, you guys know this. You guys like to wear flats, okay? Not all flats are comfortable. Like to wear heels. Not all heels are comfortable. And for the most part, heels aren't comfortable, okay? Why am I bringing shoe wear? Guys, you have to pay the attention to how your feet look, right? Your feet are really supposed to work just like your hands are, right? Your hands allow things to grip, and you're allowed to have strength with your hands. Your feet do the same thing. They carry your body weight all day. They fight gravity all day. If your feet don't have the proper footwear, you're gonna deal with walking mechanics that are trying to compromise for your feet not having the freedom it needs. So I always suggest to people that you need shoes that have a wider toe box. Now, when you go buy certain shoes, you'll see that on the side of the box it says wide toe box, and that is true. Those shoes might be a lot more open opposed to other shoes, but you're still dealing with that. And depending on the shoe wear too, the arc that shoe has can work against you or work for you. I I see a lot of people wear, like people in the nursing industry, people in hospitals, they're constantly on their feet. I see them wear a lot of sneaker shoes, especially running shoes because they're comfortable. Stuff like Hoka's, Asics, Brooks, all these shoes are great, but you also have to understand how the structure of the shoe is too, because if the shoe is way too curved, now you kind of have that help where it's faced like this, so it helps you kind of like propel forward a little bit. You're also kind of walking anteriorly all day. You're having a little sense of a push all day with your feet being kind of in an inclined position. You're moving a little bit more forward a lot faster. This can cause you to have tight calves, have a tight back, just because you're walking all day in it. That's why they're meant to go run. They're meant to be in that angle, because when you're running, you want to be propelled forward. Not saying that they're a bad shoe. All I'm saying I just want you to pay attention to the anatomy of your foot, the anatomy of your body and how it moves. Um, Having your feet to be a lot more flat, and depending on the arc that you have on your foot, a flatter surface, even if it has that shoe has some support on it, something that allows your foot to really feel a lot more comfortable and your toes to be a lot more wide, is really going to help you put pressure onto the floor a lot easier. One of the things I commonly see when I'm working with somebody, I always tell them take off your shoes so I can see how their toes are moving. A lot of times I see that their big toe is something that causes them to have instability, because let's say I tell them to get in a lunge position and I'm immediately seeing that big toe go up and then not have the good lateral stability that they need. And I always cue them, make sure you press your toe down, make sure you put pressure on your big toe, put pressure on your big toe. Immediately you see that they'll put pressure on their big toe, and that solves everything. And I think it's just because we're so out of touch and so out of feel with our feet that gives us a sense of instability and not knowing where and how to move with certain movements. So you have to think about all these things. We just spoke about our bed, right? Our pillows. We just spoke about our feet. Now let's talk about what you're doing throughout the day. How do you work? Do you work a sedentary job? If you're sitting all day, it's important that you take breaks to walk. It's important that you take, a break just to stand. I'm not saying that disregard the job you're doing, but I think there's better ways to implement some kind of activity, something active. And you see a lot of people do different things underneath their desk. They kind of have these. A lot of people, they buy these mats that kind of have rocks on them so they can stand. By standing on rocks, although that image might sound crazy, you're actually causing stimulation to your foot, and your foot's having to adapt to these rocks. And like we said, the foot has 7,000, probably more, nerve endings. That's how sensitive it is. So that's why, guys, if you have to think about where our bodies are now and where our bodies were a couple hundred years ago. Hundred years ago, we didn't have footwear. We didn't have these things. So what were we doing throughout the day to get our feet stronger? Simply as walk, right? So we were walking on barefoot on roads. We're walking on grass. Walking on grass. You know, we're walking constantly, and our foot is adapting and molding to the environment. And that's how our bodies are. Depending on the environment that our bodies have around us, that's how our bodies are going to become, and that's how our bodies are going to look like. So you're talking about that we're going from a nomad age to now where everything is that much more easier for you to go to the store. You don't have to go to the store no more. You can get things delivered to your house. All these things affect your livelihood. It's important that we understand all of this. We need to have an understanding of what our bodies is telling us. Your bodies have your own score sheet of things that you can check off and make you feel better. I always coach with this awareness to our body, because when I have people come in and I'm working with a client, I always ask, like, how do you sleep? What are you doing throughout your day? How's your nutrition? Are you walking after you eat a big meal, or are you just going to chill out? What are you doing with all that energy you're receiving? And especially if you have a big meal with carbs, you're gonna sit down and just let that just sit on you, and now it becomes heavy. Opposed to using that right away and allowing the digestion to be that much better. Those are all little small wins that we can do every day to help us out. Injuries, you know, they happen to all of us. And as you get older, as you dive in more into the fitness realm, there's going to be injuries that are kind of, um, you know, unavoidable. You're going to deal with injuries just because you've been training too hard. That happens too. That happens because you don't give the tissue the break. There's times I tell people, like, you might need just a week off. And as a trainer, as a coach, I tell somebody that, and that sounds crazy, but just because I know how hard they're going, I know how hard I'm pushing them. I need them to take some time off, let their body recover. When you're beating up your body, when you're beating up, you know, by constantly training, you're not just training your muscles. You're not just training the tendons, the ligaments, the joints. You're not just training that. You're also, affecting your immune system. You're also, you know, moving a lot of fluid around. You have to think about this. Our brains, our central nervous system also has a capacity to understand, receive, and retain information. When you're working out, you're retaining information as well. You're putting all this into perspective. If you do too much, you're going to cause your brain to basically get fried in that sense, right? I'm saying it in a sense of not medically, but I'm saying in a sense that you're going to fry yourself out, right? You're going to get to the gym, you're not going to feel it anymore. You're going to be like, I just don't feel like being here. It's because you're doing too much. And that can lead to injuries. That can lead to you getting hurt because you're not listening to this tune that your body's playing, right? There's days you get there and you're like, you know what? I don't feel like going as hard today. And in training and programming, this is something called we call RPE, which stands for rate perceived exertion. It's the rate that you perceive exertion at. So your RPE might be at a 10 that day, right? Or it might be at a 5. It depends on you, for you to understand. Like, sometimes you get to the weight room, you get to go run, you do 2 miles, 3 miles, and you realize that those 3 miles you just did felt so hard. But there's other days you get to the gym and you might run 3 miles and you're like, you actually beat the time that you've been trying to beat because you're not even thinking about it. You're just, you just went, you didn't think about it. You had a great time. Or you go and you start moving weight and the weight feels really light. And you're like, oh, I didn't know I had this in me today. Those are feedbacks. Those are biofeedbacks that you have. So it's important that you're paying attention to them because it really allows you to put it all together. The last thing I'm gonna mention in terms of injuries, guys, make sure you consult with a trainer or coach, someone that really knows the body, someone that trains in the field. Isn't just enough. There's times, and I know that sometimes we think, because this is how marketing works, right? We look at our Instagrams, we look at our Yelp, we see a restaurant, you see the pictures of the restaurant, and you see how good it looks, and you're like, that place is really good. My approach to things is, I don't want to go to the restaurant that has that their page looks too perfect. I don't want to go to the Yelp. I don't want to go on Yelp and see the page that looks too perfect. I want to see the reviews from the people. I want to see what people wrote. That's what intrigues me in something. That's what I want you to tell you is sometimes when you're seeking out trainers, you're seeking out gyms, it's not about the aesthetic look, it's about what that person knows. And some of the greatest coaches that I've been able to speak to don't own gyms and aren't in they work from home to home. They work with personal people at their houses. So what I wanted to say is it's not always the pretty things that you see. It's not always the nice decorated place. It's the people that know their stuff. And I always say, you know, the real luxury cars don't do marketing, right? So you'll never see Lamborghini or Ferrari have a commercial on TV, and it's because those are names that don't need marketing. You know what it is, and you know what you're getting into at the moment you hear it. And with trainers, with coaches, it could be the same thing. So, make sure that you talk to somebody. Talk to somebody who's already been somebody that's been in gym, somebody that's been training. Go to see different styles of coaching. Go try this group fitness class. Go try personal training. Go try out different things. That way you know what is best for you, so you have a guidance moving forward. Guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time to see my videos, see the content I'm constantly putting out. I definitely want to make it educational. I know sometimes it can be a little bit detailed in the sense that you might feel a little bit lost, but I think that just comes with the territory of explaining all these kind of things. I'm going to dive into other things with injuries. I'm going to talk about the ankle, the knee, the shoulder, the back, your spine, all these things that obviously we need to talk about. But I just wanted to give you guys a little overview of things that I feel that we all need to address. So appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It means a lot to me. So I thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.